Inspirational Creatives, episode 255. This episode of Inspirational Creatives is hosted on the podcast platform Libsyn. If you're thinking of starting your own podcast and if you're looking for a podcast host, Libsyn is the podcast hosting platform that the Inspirational Creatives podcast has been reliably hosted on since launching in November 2014. If you'd like to give it a try, I'm pleased to share with you the promo code CREATIVE, which you can use on libsyn.com. That promo code is good for up to 2 months free trial. If you use the code at the beginning of a month, then you'll receive all of that month and the next month free. However, if you use the promo code later in the month, you'll get the remainder of that month free and the following month free too. That promo code is CREATIVE, which you can use on libsyn.com. Welcome to Inspirational Creatives. I'm your host, Rob Lawrence. Join me every Friday as I chat with successful artists, producers, and creative entrepreneurs who share powerful stories and strategies. They can help you to create the life that you want. Listen each week as these inspirational creatives show you how to take your creativity to the next level. You'll learn how to create a sustainable business that inspires others and gives you the financial freedom and lifestyle that you want. Thanks for listening. Make sure you sign up at inspirationalcreatives.com to get free exclusive bonus material. And now, on with the show. Rob here, and a warm welcome to another episode of Inspirational Creatives. Today, I'm very excited to introduce to you someone who is an expert in taking action. And when it comes to getting our creative work done, action is key. My guest is someone who started at the bottom and now claims to be living the American dream in an authentic way. Quite incredibly, he's someone who has overcome a stutter and lost over 100 kilos, that's over 200 pounds in weight, and today is on track to make $25 million in revenue. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today, Mike Giannulis. Mike, welcome.
Hey, wow, that's a very, very cool intro. Thank you, and glad to be here.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to have you here on the show today. So for those yet to meet you, how would you describe who you are and how you show up in the world today?
I would say that I'm someone that I have a very, very curious mind. I love information. I love knowledge. But even beyond that, I love application of those things. So I would say that's kind of sums me up. And, creatively, I think I can be pretty creative, not in a design sense, but in idea sense. I've got that part of me that I've kind of have always had.
Absolutely. So I understand you're a very successful copywriter. So I'd love to understand how you got into marketing and what it is that you do today. And then maybe we can explore some of your earlier experiences.
Yeah, sure. So basically, way back, but 12 years ago now, it's been about back in 2006, I started a blog site called onlyonemike.com, and I still keep that site up to this day. But I began it way back then, and I wrote, just kind of like personal development, almost like a journal for myself type things. And there was a person that I knew from my church back then. She happened to read one of my articles, and she sent me an email saying, "Hey, I think you'd be an excellent copywriter." And I wrote her back, said, "Oh, thank you so much. That's so cool. What is that? What does that even mean?" I had no idea what that was. And I found out, there are people that write ads, and I didn't even know, I don't know why, but I was 24, I think, at the time. And I didn't even know that was like a job, like you could actually do that. And so I went ahead and took a job offer with her, and I worked at her company, and she owned a publishing company that would sell informational products pretty much. And so I learned to write like those long form sales pages, and, like where it's like 10,000 to 20,000 words to sell like $1,000 product. And it was tougher because it's not like selling physical stuff where it's like people see this and this is what they want. So you say, hey, here's this shoe. It's a cool shoe, right? And yeah, great. This was like, do you want to learn how to start your own internet business? Well, so you have to like really get to the core of why people want things, what they want, what are the reasons behind the supposed reasons. There's so many things. And so just kind of over time, I learned under her, and eventually she'd made me a partner in the firm just because I just took off quite fast because it was just fun. And I think at the time I felt like, wow, this is what I want to do forever. Like it was just so cool to be able to write something, hit send, and see sales, see income, just like that, within the hour. It was quite fun. So that's kind of how I got into it.
That's amazing. So what would you say your secret is, or what's the secret to great copywriting?
That's a great question. I mean, you could ask any copywriter probably has their own secrets, but I think the ones for me, the big ones are writing a really, really compelling big idea on the front. So something unique, something they haven't heard before, something that jumps out and makes them think, oh, this must be different than everything else. So it's basically like becoming, doing something to be different than everyone else in your space. And it can't just be completely crazily different. It has to tie in to your product in some way. And I think the other element that you need as well is to really know how to craft a really good offer. Like I tell people, if you can't write good copy, then make a great offer. Okay. And that's probably been one of my biggest secrets is that I've been able pretty much to write the offers or to create the product around the offer that I come up with. So as I'm writing the sales piece, I'll think, oh, you know what people will love? I bet they would love if it had this. And I'll just write it as if it does. And I bet they would love this. And man, this would be a great, as you write, you start to always brainstorm, what are the objections that people are going to have? They're going to say, well, maybe you're going to sell me a site, but I don't know how to get traffic. Okay, well, that's a great bonus for that offer, right? So I kind of work from both ends where the objections, I can turn them into either part of the product or bonuses, right? That's been a very cool thing. And then I think the third thing is you've got to be bold. So many people struggle because they don't want to just come out and say like, here's what I got and this is a great thing. They kind of want to go, oh, well, if you want to check it out, you might want to try it. Unfortunately, humans, we don't respond to that. We need like big, bold claims. And that is a thing that I personally don't like. Like I wish the world wasn't that way. But there's a reason why, like an example in politics, you hardly ever hear till after the thing's done with, he's a pretty nice guy. You can vote for him or you can vote for me. It's, like, no, it's like they're evil and I'm good, right? It's like everything gets painted in these stark contrasts because you only have so much time to cut through. So you've got to, when you're going to write your ads and write your promos, you've got to really stand for something and be bold in what it is that you stand for and just go all out. You can't really hold back.
That's really exciting to hear. So it actually helps us to understand some of the psychology behind the marketing because it does take a certain amount of courage to be bold, doesn't it? And I think that can be unusual for some.
It does. And it is hard. Even for me, it's hard for me if I'm trying to sell my own stuff. Like I almost have to hire someone else to write copy for me. Because now when I write copy for like a different product for someone else, it's easy to be like, oh, this dude's a genius and this system is incredible and this works. When it's my own stuff, I tend to be more like, it's pretty good. I think you might like it, right? Because it's my own. And so that's the thing that I think we all face. So you can also get help from the outside. It's a similar from the psychology standpoint. It's the same thing as like, most people that I've ever met have never taken a good picture, right? Like you'll take a photo with like you and 3 or 4 of your friends and you'll see it and you'll say, man, they all look great, but I look terrible. Look at my chin, look at my shirt. I got some stain on my shirt, so we all have this sort of inner reflection of ourselves. And when the picture doesn't match it in our own minds, we're like, oh, I look terrible. Like it's very odd that you'll go, whoa, I look great. Let's post this picture. I mean, it does happen, but it's the same type of thing when you're trying to sell your own stuff. You see the flaws or the shortcomings or the problems, of what you've done more than other people would.
That's fascinating. Yeah. And I think one of the things that's going through my mind as you're just talking about this stuff is that you've been in this game for quite some time and you must have seen some changes. Is it getting harder for people to differentiate themselves from others?
Yeah, I think it's basically, it is harder, but it also in some ways is a little bit easier. So it's kind of, it goes both ways. So it's harder in the sense that there's way more people nowadays who are selling similar stuff, right? That makes it harder. But the part that makes it easier is kind of two things. One, there's a lot more people now buying than ever before. Online, especially more people than ever are buying. I just saw a thing that said Amazon just announced 100 million people are Amazon Prime members. 100 million. That's just crazy. But so there's just a lot more people. There's a lot bigger audience of people to sell to. And then secondly, kind of part of that is it's a lot easier to see competitors' ads, competitors' programs, what they're offering. So that gives you an advantage to look for where they're at and where perhaps you can jump in. So one of the things that I teach, and I won't go into the full depth of it, but when it comes to breaking in or getting into to a new market, you really only have three strategies that you can kind of hold on to. You can either be first. So if you're first, you're pretty good, right? If you're the first guy that ever sold like how to start an internet business back in like 98, you pretty much owned it, right? There was no one else. You didn't have to say anything fancy. You just had to say, here, start an internet business. I'll just show you how. So if you're first, that's awesome. You're going to do great, unless it's a niche where there isn't anyone that wants to pay for it in there. So you always, if you are the first one and it's 2018 or beyond, you kind of want to know, why am I first, right? Because there might be, that is not a good niche. But if you can't be first, the next best thing is to be better. So you find a way to take what first has done and do an even better job. And if you can't be better because they've just already got it, then you have to be different. And so to kind of go back to your question, in order to be different, you've really got to look at your competitors, analyze what are they doing well and where are they struggling. And it's going to be in their struggles that you'll find the things that you can probably do differently than them. So for example, you could look at competitors or books on Amazon and you can read all the 1-star reviews and say, hey, and look for common themes. Where are these authors falling short? What are the problems that people bring up again and again? Because those are probably going to be, that's kind of like an underserved area where perhaps you could jump in at and you could angle yourself as solving that particular problem.
That's really, really useful there, Mike. And you've essentially got three different strategies there. You answered the question I was next going to ask you, which is where do you begin with all of this stuff for anybody starting out? Yeah, thank you for jumping in on that. So I'd love to go back to some of your earlier story. I mean, you've got a fascinating history and you've spoken about some of your earlier entrepreneurial experiences on other podcasts. Feel free to give some examples, but I'd love to learn about some of your earlier experiences and what they taught you.
Sure. I began... I think I probably would, when I look back, when did I first start trying to like do my own business or sell my own stuff? And I think when I was in 7th grade, I actually, I don't know why this was, but back then especially, I wrote a lot of poems, a lot of poetry. I wrote my first poem in 4th grade. And I don't know how or why, but the teacher, when I brought it up there, she was like, you didn't write this. And I was like, yeah, I did. She's like, you did not. And I was like, yeah, I did. And I guess she was like really impressed by it. And she got, I guess they called in, long story short, it ended up being put in the paper in my hometown, which was cool, and then they had a teacher read my poem to the whole school. So it was neat for me. I was like, wow, I can write something and get all this attention. And not that wasn't why, but it was just cool to see this response. And I actually, when I was in 7th grade, I started taking some of the poems And at school, I would actually print them and fold them to be like little cards.
Hmm.
And then I would stand on my street, and as cars would drive by, I would stop them and be like, "Hey, I want to buy my poem," and I would sell them for like 25 cents or something. And didn't I probably only sold 3 or 4, and probably just because they felt bad for this kid, But that was probably the first time when I was like, wow, if I just go and do something like that, I get a result. And probably around that age, I started to really think about, because I would see my family, my mom especially, would work so hard at her job, just work, and we never got anywhere. She did awesome. She did everything that she could, but it was like no matter how many more hours she put in, it didn't really change anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of thought, as I get older, like, I want to do something where I can be in more control of my time. There were so many times when my mom couldn't be there. She had to go to her job. I remember one Easter, she had to leave, and I was just crying, like holding on to her, begging her to stay. And she did what she had to do. And I thank God for her every day, because she's been like just incredible, to help me get to where I'm at. But my whole goal was, I got to find something that I can do that creates more income, that isn't just tied to how many hours I put in. And so, I had that kind of poem thing. And then when I got older, when I turned 18, I did the one thing you should not ever do, was I got a credit card. This should show you that I'm kind of a little bit odd. So the thing that I purchased with a credit card was not like a new pair of shoes or anything like that. I bought a how to buy real estate, no money down course. And that was the first thing that I ever purchased. And I read these courses, and then I got into that. And I probably, by the time I was done, bought 2 or 3 of them. And, I tried, but I didn't ever make it. I didn't have any good deals fall my way. And I find now, as I look back, I probably had 3 or 4 deals almost happen, and they all fell through at the end. And I realize now that I just gave up too soon. I don't think most people, they don't fail, they give up too soon. And there's almost like a spiritual thing. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's like, you've got to serve your time, and you've got to be consistent, and you have to understand that, let's just say you're going to get 1 out of every 10 or 1 out of every 20, your first 10 may fail. And if you quit at that point, you're basically saying, oh, well, that's it. But you don't know that next deal may have been the one, and that one deal would make up for all of it. So, I tried that. And then I had actually my most crazy story, which we won't go into the full thing, but I started with a friend of mine, a dairy goat farm. And that was craziness. I was away in school, going to a small Bible college at the time, and we kind of, on the side, we started this thing, but we had over 500 pregnant dairy goats. They were all pregnant. And so it was a crazy experience. It was about a 6-month time frame, and it was just nuts. I mean, truly like crazy. They were all having kids, and we were trying to bottle feed every baby goat, and it was quite a time.
So I've got to ask you the question: how did you get into that? What inspired you to buy 500 pregnant goats?
Well, truthfully, we were trying to start like a nonprofit that would allow troubled teens and men who could avoid the court system and instead come work on the farm, and kind of like we would pay them, but they couldn't spend it till they got out, but they would kind of serve their time. They would have to go to like Bible studies and things like that. That was kind of what we were thinking, like bigger picture. We were going to try to build dorm room type things there. So it would be like an option for people that would say, hey, I don't want to go to jail for 6 months. I'll go to this kind of like almost a rehab type program. But we didn't ever really get past the first 6 months. We had a lot of problems, had a lot of government issues where we weren't getting approved for permits, and we lost our funding source, which was through the USDA, which is a U.S. agency, and they pulled our funding. And so at the time, we kind of lost everything.
And what was their reason for pulling the funding?
It's a very odd thing, but basically waste treatment plan, that we had to approve of a waste treatment plan, which basically meant like, what happens when the goats poop? Where does it go? That's it. It's there's no good way to say it, right? That's it. And they didn't really like the plans that we had, and the way it is over here, they don't really tell you what they don't like. So they'll just say, hey, I don't like this, and you don't know what they don't like. And then they're not allowed to tell you what to fix. So we just kept trying and trying and trying, and they kept saying no. And eventually they said, sorry guys, this isn't right. Boom. And now my name wasn't on anything. So I was just more or less helping the main guy out, which is good for me, but I felt bad for him at the time because we were trying to save my name for when we did like our expansion. That was our whole thought process. Like, let's save you, and then in the future we expand and you can go get some more funding, Yeah.
So other than perhaps not buying 500 pregnant goats, what did you learn from that particular experience?
Yeah. So that is the thing that I always say. My first thing I always tell people after I tell that is, and my main takeaway from this whole speech is, if you've gotten anything, it's don't buy goats. That's what. But what I took from it is you should probably not get involved that big in things you don't have a lot of experience in. That's a really big takeaway. I was young and dumb and just like, whatever, let's go and try it. But I had zero experience, like zero. I'm not like a farmer guy. I'm from the city. And so for me, I was truly a fish out of water. And I think the other big thing is, really make sure that you bring in experts in the areas where you lack. So we should have probably a lot sooner brought in attorneys and the kind of people that could help us with responding to those issues. We tried to do it all on our own, and we didn't really know what to do.
That sounds like some great advice there in terms of getting expertise in the areas where your own expertise or experience falls short. But in terms of setting out on a new adventure, be it a creative or another sort, are you saying then it's all right to get out of your comfort zone and try something you don't have a lot of experience in, but perhaps not too far?
Well, yeah. So my thoughts on this, and I'm probably slightly different than other people. So my view is this. My view is it's kind of based on your age. So I think when you're just getting started and you're young, I think just say yes. Just say yes to whatever. I'll meet people that are 20 and they're like, well, I was offered an internship. They don't want to pay me. So like, no way, and my thinking is like, you have zero experience. You probably best job you'll get is probably a very low paying job. And so you've got to just jump out there and get the experience. And I get it. It may be even wrong. Like you should get paid. That's fine. But at the end of the day, you got to look at getting paid does not just mean cash right now in your pocket. What you do when you're 20, 21, 22 can pay you for the rest of your life with experience. When I took the job that I had, I didn't get paid that well. But I'll tell you, I learned the things that now allow me to be the CEO of this $25 million company. Right. And a big part of that was getting started young enough where I could afford to make the mistakes and I could afford to not have to get paid great income, So when you're young, I just tell people, say yes, and you don't know anything. Like when you're young, you literally don't know anything. You know so much that you don't even know what you don't know, right? Like you just don't know. So I feel like you can't even say, well, I like this, or I don't like this, or I like that. You think you can, but you don't know till you go try it. So I'd say when you're younger, probably say 30 and under, just go and have at it. Learn everything you can. Try different things out, because the older you get, the more you have to be responsible. because you maybe get a spouse, and then you've got kids, and and when you have the kids, and you've got to protect them, you don't want them to starve, right? So that's why I say, especially when you're younger, let's say you're older and you're just getting started. So what do you do then? I think you can still take risks. You just have to be a little more calculated. You got to really think it through and just make sure. And then odds are, as you get older, you start to realize what you're good at and what you're not, right? Mm-hmm. And as you learn that, you can kind of adjust and say, okay, well, now I see that, this was not a very good thing for me, or this is a good thing, so I'm going to do way more of that, or not, right? You've got to just kind of figure out the things that you're good at and then do more of those things.
Yeah, I love how you describe that in terms of the amount of risk you take depending on what stage of life you're in. Coming back to just a point you made a few moments ago about giving up too soon. You've obviously had a stab at all sorts of different things, from poetry to raising goats.
Yeah.
How do you know when to give up?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I can honestly say I don't know, because it's so dependent upon where you're at and what your goals are. I can say, for me personally, man, when would I give up? Let's think. That's such a great question. I think I would say you give up when you feel like you've truly exhausted every possible resource, or when the passion is completely dead. Like, if you can say to yourself, if I figured this out and if it worked, would I be happy? Would I really enjoy what I'm up to? That's probably the question. I think a big part of it comes back to passion. Because it's the passion that's going to carry you through, right? If you don't have that passion, then you're probably not going to stick to it because you don't care. And I see that a lot. Like, I see all the time people, they want to do something that I've done, right? But then their question is always, well, what do you do every day? And I'll go over, I do this, I do this, I do this. Like, wow, you do all that. Well, do I have to do all that? Right? And that's the thing. That's when I know they're probably not going to achieve the success in the way that I have, or in the field that I have, is because I don't view it as, oh, I have to do this stuff every day. Like, I set it up because I enjoy it and I like it. And that's really, I think, how you find your success, is that you enjoy doing that thing that you do. My wife, she loves the makeup stuff, like anything. She loves it. I mean, our house, we have an entire room for her that is just wall to wall makeup. It's nuts, But what she'll do sometimes before bed, we'll be in bed and she'll be watching a YouTube video on how to do a new look. She might watch that for an hour. I'm over there on my side watching how to increase your headline conversions, and the thing is, though, if that was what we were told we had to go do, odds are we would fight it. We would struggle. We would not want to do it. We'd be setting, like a goal sheet, like, I must watch 1 hour per day, every day of this, and we'd be like, I got to do it. I got to do it. I got to do it. And I think when you try to do all those things, you end up, this is a truth that I've come to think is true anyway, is you really can't make yourself do something long term. You can make yourself do something short term, but if you don't want to actually do that thing, odds are you're going to kind of fall off of it. And that's why we see the stats on people that set like a New Year's resolution, right? They'll do it for like a week or two and then they fall off. It's like 95% have already quit within like 1 month. So that's the other kind of trick. You've got to take the things that you really enjoy and do more of those things, and then build out around that.
That's awesome. And I love how we're turning now away from failure and towards success and being passionate about what it is that you do. What have you learned so far, and what are some of the favorite tips you'd like to offer our listener in terms of when you're trying to scale what it is that you're doing? Say you've got a successful idea and it's starting to get some traction. How can you then amplify that success?
That's a great question. So one of the things that I've come to understand about scaling now more than ever is the answer lies in the word itself. We always talk about, how do I scale? How do I scale? Well, the reality is you scale by thinking of your business as a scale, like a physical weight scale. And I break it down into what I call MOPS. So if you want to clean up in business, you got to use MOPS.
Right? Okay, cool. I like it.
MOPS stands for marketing, operations, product or fulfillment, and sales. So those are your 4 key components. You could also maybe draw a big circle around MOPS and write a big F, and the F would be finance. But the finance part is cool because you can outsource that quite a bit more than you can the others. But what you want to do is you've got to look at each of those 4 pieces, MOPS, as kind of like tied in, and you want to keep them balanced. So where people fail with scaling is they try to bring up one piece at one time, where then the other 3 tip downward. So it's just like a scale, right? So you've got to continually bring all those up at the same time. You've got to say, okay, we're going to increase our ads, which means we're going to increase what? The M. We're going to do more marketing. That means we need more from the operational standpoint. We need more customer support people. From the product side, we got to make sure if we're going to ship it out, we got to make sure we have enough to ship out. And then from the sales side, if you're doing a phone sale or in person, do we have enough people to go and fulfill on that? So you got to look at the different pieces. And oftentimes where I see people failing, and I've done this myself, is you crank up marketing and sales, but you don't think as much about operations and you don't think about the product side. So if you do that, then you end up with a backlog of problems because you're like, oh my gosh, we just sold all these people. The product's not getting to their door, or they're calling and we're not answering the phone because we're understaffed. So you've got to really begin to look at those 4 pieces as one big piece. And so again, if you just think of it as a scale, okay, I'm going to increase each piece by 1. So you can almost just think of it as a count. Each piece will go up by 1. Now it'll go up by 2. It'll go up by 3. And you're focusing on all those. The other really, big advice that I'll say, but until you're there, you'll never understand it because it's just like, I didn't think it was true. When it comes to the finance side, there's really 2 things. What does every business always talk about, always focused on? Profit, right? Mm-hmm. So all we ever heard, what's your profit? What's your profit? Okay, profit is really only telling half the story. And the other story, which I think in some ways even more important, is cash flow. So cash flow is so important to scaling. What is cash flow? It just means especially when you're scaling, you have to front load a lot of your expenses. So you're bringing on more staff. You got to pay them to train them before they're even going to be able to help you. You got to front load your ad cost. You maybe got to front load compliance and attorneys and all that stuff to review all your stuff, make sure you're doing everything. So you end up where you front load a lot of expenses, and profits come. But many times, depending upon your sales cycle, like for us and one of my companies, we have about a 3-month sales cycle. So it'll take about 3 months before we've seen all the income that we're going to make off of that particular customer. Because of that, we still have to spend for our ads each week. So every week we're due for ads, and we're paying, And so even though we're going to get the profit, it might take 4 months to realize that profit. In the in-between time, we've got to pay all of our staff, pay all the bills, pay the ad costs, right? All those things. So cash flow, the bigger you get, becomes such an important thing. And I used to always think, and there's probably people on this podcast, if you've ever had like a really big client, like the big guys, you'll submit them an invoice, and they'll pay that thing in 3 months. And you're like, why in the world is this $1 billion company paying me 3 months from now? And George down the street pays me that same day, right? Yeah. And it's because of cash flow. That's really all it's about. There's entire jobs, all they do is sit there and go, okay, well, if I pay this bill on the 13th, I can pay that bill on the on the 18th and this one on the 23rd. Like, it's because, you have the cash, but it's not always there at the same exact time. So that's a very like detailed answer, but that's a big thing too.
It's a great answer. And I think no matter what size your business is operating at, cash flow is so important. I agree with you there. And it's really nice to hear it so clearly, because when you run out of cash, you're out of business.
Yeah.
So it's about keeping the cash flowing in that sense. So that's great. I'd love to talk to you now about some of your own personal challenges and how you've been able to overcome some of those personal challenges. I mean, you've overcome a stutter, as I read in your bio, and you've lost an incredible amount of weight as well, 255 pounds, if I'm right, which is incredible, absolutely incredible. And I'd love to know what's given you the motivation, the drive and the confidence to reach your own goals, and how have you been able to take such sustainable action?
Yeah, I think part of it, we'll start with the stutter. I still have it, but it's not too bad, and I can, I guess, control it to an extent. But I was born that way, I guess. There's a certain subset of people who have it, and I just happen to be one of those people. So what I've done is I actually went to like a school, like there was a 2-week course, and I went to the school and I learned there how to talk and how to be more in control of it. And I could actually be even better if I like really followed it. But the only problem was that I had was it was hard to translate, because if I was doing it just to show you, if I talk like this, then I would probably never stutter, but I would end up talking like this, so that part was kind of hard for me. So I try to take what I can from that and apply it to when I talk. And I think the good side of the stutter is it caused me to really expand my vocabulary. Like, I learned how to say the same thing like 10 ways, which I think played a good part in why I was a good copywriter, because that's kind of what you do, right? You have to come up with a new way to say the same thing. And that's what I did every day of my life, every time I spoke. And then weight-wise, just crazy stories there, but I was pretty much big my entire life. I began to get overweight when I was probably like around 5 or 6. And I remember in kindergarten, I weighed 69 pounds. By the time I was around 16, I recall I weighed 359 pounds. And I recall that because I got on a scale and I weighed 359, and one of my friends was there. And he said, "Well, Mike, 1 more pound and you'll be a complete circle." That's what he said. So I was like, funny, So, and then by my 20s, I was all the way up to, over 540 pounds. And I felt completely out of control in that area. And me being like a positive person trying to accomplish everything, I would work so hard and I would lose like 100 pounds, 120 pounds, 80 pounds. But I would always put the weight back on. And I would always blame myself, So this is all on me. I'm terrible. I need to just stop. But I didn't understand at the time the science that was going on. I didn't understand addiction. That's a big, big piece to this whole puzzle. Scientists now say that weight and weight problems is what they call it multifactorial, which is a fancy way of saying there's a lot of causes and they're interconnected, and it's really hard to fix it because you don't know which piece is causing it. So I actually got on a weight loss TV show that I tried out for. I was on that show. It aired. I was on ABC here in the States, and it aired everywhere. I mean, it was like all over the place, all over Earth. This thing aired, and on the show, I was on the show for 1 year, and I lost the 255 pounds, which was awesome. I went from 493 to 238, and then the show ended, and I went right back to eating and doing my old way. And within a couple years, I was back exactly to 493 pounds, which was crazy. And I really thought at the time, like, I was just a failure and there was no point and why even try anymore. And I didn't want to even go see people because they'd all see me on this show as this like epic person. I would get all these emails, how I changed people's lives and you inspired me and all this. And then finally I started getting all these health issues, and I went and I found out about a surgery called the duodenal switch, which I got because it basically, I found out that my metabolic rate was really bad. It was that the scaling for it is a 0 to a 1.0, and I was around a 0.6, which meant I was that meant that I was about half of what I should be. And they've since have found out that rapid weight loss causes it's called your BMR, your baseline metabolic rate, to really drop bad. So anyway, the surgery that I got actually fixed it. It was pretty epic. And within about a year to maybe, just about a year, I lost all the weight again. And I actually got all the way down. Now I'm 205 pounds. So I'm in the best weight I've ever been. I'm completely healthy. I go to the gym. I exercise. I do everything that I can to keep the weight off. It's been about 2.5 years. I've kept the weight off, and I'm very active. I walk all the time. And I think going back to how do I sustain it, I think, for one, the first thing that I'll say to people is you got to do whatever works for you. And the path that you take may not be the path that everyone else takes. My path was very up and very down, but I found something that was based on science that had a proven track record. And I went that route because I didn't care anymore about what people thought about me. I thought I cared about, am I going to die? There's a big change when you realize that if you don't make changes, you're not going to be there for the people that you care about. So that was big. But also I made sure that the changes that I made were very small changes. So I didn't, in times past, over and over and over, I would fail every single Monday, because that's the only day you're allowed to start, I think, when you're going to diet. And I would always say, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. and I'm going to bike for an hour, and I'm going to come back and drink my egg drop protein shake with green algae juice, and then I'm going to go to the gym and going to do weights and come back and eat my 4 ounces of chicken breast with a side of broccoli, and every time I would make those drastic changes, I would fail over and over again. And I since have realized that addiction has two sides, right? It has the chaos side, the out of order side, out of control, chaos. And it has the flip side, the in control, controlling order side. And so what we're doing when we're trying to control everything so tightly is it's still a form of the addiction manifesting itself in a different way. And I see this happening all the time with so many friends and family. They don't want to just make small changes. They want to drastically change. Like I'm not going to eat from 6 p.m. till 4 p.m. They make up these things, or I'm only going to eat chicken breast and broccoli for 2 months, right? That's just the addiction manifesting itself yet again. And instead of eating whatever you want, you're still saying, I'm in control. I'm controlling this. I'm in control. I'm going to only eat this, and this. So many people, that's what they get caught up in. And I think instead, you got to just kind of be free and make very small changes over time. So I would go to the gym. For the first 6 months, I went to the gym wearing jeans and a t-shirt. I didn't even go to even try that hard. I just figured, hey, if I go do a small little bit, at least I'm doing something, right? And that's what I did. And I would do some, but then after about 6 months, I was like, you know what? I'm going to wear gym shorts this time, and it was weird, but I went and I was like, that wasn't that bad. I'm going to do some more. Now I love it. I love it. I go and I enjoy it. It's fun. And I like the feeling. And whenever I'm sick and I don't go, I feel terrible. I'm like, oh, I just want to get back in the gym, and I think I could never have forced myself to do that from day one, because I had to really change who I was. And so that's the real key, is you got to change who you are. And you do that over time by making lots of small changes. But then going back to full circle, why is that not what people are taught? And is because that's not what sells books. That's not what sells courses, right? So it's never going to be a common thing, because it's too true and it just is like not sexy. That's that's kind of what I think,
That's fascinating. I mean, wow, so much in there. Such a fascinating insight into addiction. I'd never thought of it in that way, with those two sides. And it's so right when you point that out. When I start to think about addiction in any shape or form, both of those sides show up.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. But also, I really liked your wisdom there in terms of first doing what's right for you and giving yourself permission to do what feels right to you, because I can instantly imagine how your motivation would be that much higher if you're doing something that feels good to you in that sense. And secondly, making small changes rather than trying to make the big changes too quickly, just focusing on the small changes that have a bigger impact over time.
Yes.
Amazing. So, wow, loads of stuff in there. And I've learned so much in this time that we've had together today, Mike. Just beginning to wrap up then, I'd love to ask you one key question, I suppose, with all of your wisdom and thoughts in mind. What piece of advice would you share with a younger Mike today? Knowing all that you've done and all that you've been through so far. And by the way, congratulations on the weight loss and making your own decision and following your own path to getting there. But what would be the piece of advice that you would share with a younger Mike today?
I think I would, if I could look back and tell myself like one or two things, I think the big one would be continue to pursue your passions and don't view a failure as failure. I think back when I was younger, I especially took things very, very hard. If it didn't go the way I thought it would, if I tried to do anything and it didn't pan out, I would be like, oh, I took it personally. And I said, oh, I'm a failure, or, instead of this thing that I tried didn't work. And I think that would be a big thing for me, because there would be times when I would work hard and then see a thing kind of fail, and I would say, oh, well, I'm a failure. So I would take an external outcome and attempt to blame myself internally. And that, I believe, that only set me back probably a few years. The other thing I probably would say jokingly, but I'd probably say, hey, if you can buy goats, don't. Maybe, I don't know. I did actually, I always kind of joke about that, but I did learn a ton from that experience. But yeah, I think that would be the big thing for me, and I think for other people is really don't try to internalize external events, because in a weird way, that's also a manifestation of ego, right? It's saying that I'm so important that this external event was caused by me. Both ways, for the success or the failure. We're only one part of a very, very, very giant ecosystem.
I love that. That's really good. And with that piece of wisdom in mind, what's the one thing that's inspired you today or recently?
Well, I think you've inspired me, because you make me feel so awesome with all the stuff I say. I don't know.
Right.
No, I feel like the stuff that I say is just stuff that I've picked up, over time. And I honestly, I love doing things like this. I feel like whenever I do podcasts, and I would say for anyone out there, like, I learn sometimes more by being interviewed than I ever thought was even in my head. It just kind of comes out. And I think that we should all do that more and take time to reflect on things. I think that's a big key for me now, is like, how do I reflect and take time and set aside time to think? Because we can get caught up in trying to do, we do things all the time, but we don't really ever stop and just say, hey, let me just sit here for an hour and just think. Right. And so I think when I do that is when I tend to find inspiration.
That's really awesome. Yeah. I hadn't thought of it that way before, but I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think that's what's so wonderful about these windows of opportunity to get together like this, to talk about this stuff. You get to almost stop time in some respects and actually reflect on what you know and think deeper. And I can't tell you how much I've learned. I've been scribbling away here. My journal pages are absolutely full with thoughts and ideas from our chat today, which is just a great sign of a good conversation.
Well, thank you.
And what are you grateful for today, Mike? You've been through a lot, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start with saying I'm just grateful just to be here, because a lot of people that are as big as I was don't get out of it. I look back now and I see pictures and I think at my peak at 540 pounds, I was closer to weighing 1,000 pounds than I was to weighing 0 pounds. And that just shocks me. And I just am thankful because at the time I had diabetes and I had high blood pressure, I had sleep apnea, all these other problems. And thank God they're all fixed. They're all gone. And that's like, something that I'm just forever grateful for, just to be here. And I'm grateful for my family. I was born into an awesome family. And I just thankful for that too. So
in the context of everything that we've talked about today, and we've talked about a lot, is there anything you'd like to add?
I feel like I've said a lot, so I don't know. I think the biggest thing that I always say to people is to take action. There's a quote that I say all the time, and it's just real simple. Life rewards those who take action, not those who take notes. And it's funny, but it's true, right?
Yeah.
We got to go out and take the things that we learn, and we should. I take notes all the time, but the big key is let's take those notes and now let's go take action. And because until you take action, then you haven't done anything.
That's such a good point. That's such a great point. And so what's next for you then, Mike? What's today and tomorrow about for you right now?
Well, right now I'm all about scaling my company and working on ways to fire myself. And I say that in a sense of I want to take everything that's in my head and find the right people to take what's in my head and go do that thing. And so now we're all about like creating processes and building out our team, and we're scaling now to where we have over 80 people now on our staff. And we're just continuing to bring in the right people and to make it so the whole machine can operate even without me there. Not that I want to not be there, but I just want to make sure that if God forbid anything did happen to me, everyone would still have their job and everyone would still know what to go do every day.
Got it. So where can folks find out more about you, Mike, and how can they connect with you and find out more about all the great work that you're doing?
Yeah. So as I said before, I have my site up still from way back in the day. So you can always go and read some of my old stuff and things that I still post. And that site is onlyonemike.com. That's O-N-E. So onlyonemike.com. And just for people here on this podcast, I put up a page to give them a book that I wrote. It's completely free for them.
Awesome.
The book is called How to Obliterate the Blank Page, kind of like strategies for writing high converting copy when starting from scratch. So it's basically the questions and kind of the process I go through when you're staring at a blank page and you need to write a sales page or an email or a request for something. And it breaks down like, how do we do that? How do we go about writing something that makes people take an action? So they can download that book by going to onlyonemike.com/inspirational.
That's awesome.
That's the link.
onlyonemike.com/inspirational. That's awesome.
That's it.
Mike, it's been a real pleasure to chat with you today. Like I said earlier, I've learned so much from our short time together. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. I had a great time too. So thanks.
Thanks for listening. Nothing beats the stories and advice of an expert to help you raise your creative game. I would love to know what you thought about today's episode, so don't forget to subscribe in iTunes where you can rate and review the show. If you like this episode, I invite you to share it on Facebook or Twitter with the one person you know who will benefit from the wisdom shared here today. You can find the show notes on inspirationalcreatives.com/podcast. If you have a burning question or a great idea for a guest, head on over to inspirationalcreatives.com/contact, where you can connect with me there.